Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into a specific topic that has truly transformed our lives and the way that business operate. The cloud. The cloud has brought incredible advantages, enhancing collaboration, accessibility, and storage capabilities. However, with great power comes great responsibility. We have to be aware of this unique security risk that comes with the technology and the operating models that we work with. So Gary, let's take a look at that.
Absolutely, the cloud's become a critical part for every society and every organisation, but it's integral that we understand those risks associated with the cloud. So let's delve into the top 5 risks associated with the cloud, how at Softcat we can help mitigate and protect the risk and the data therein.
So Gary, you mentioned 5 concerns there, but let's start with the first one, data loss. Over 60% of the organisations that we work with have noted some form of data loss and leakage in the environment. How best would you recommend that they try and combat that?
So I think treating cloud data has to have the same rigour and security credentials as most customers are aware of doing on-prem. Sometimes they don't understand the feature functionality of locking the data down as well. And I think also, if you think about data governance, which is becoming much more prevalent, understanding the risks as data is today within the cloud, how to properly secure, how well to mask it, and certainly how best to turn off the feature functionality that will allow certain security threats to creep in. And we know if we think about ransomware, the way that the ransomware threats are changing and the way the ransom groups are affecting the way that they take data and manipulate that for profit, I think it's an evolving learning curve, and it's absolutely critical that the customers understand that the training of their IT resources keep up with the changes within the industry and the security vector. So I think it's imperative that customers understand the importance of having the right security resources and keeping ahead of the threats.
Thanks, Gary. So let's take a look at that second of those top 5, the insecure control plane. So customers take a significant amount of effort when it comes to securing their infrastructure, their applications, but not always the control panel that operates around those. How would you recommend that customers try to do that?
So I think across the hyperscalers, there's a difference in feature functionality on different control planes. So customers have to be fully aware of what those differences are before they start affecting the features and the way that they lock it down. I think the other thing is having role-based access controls, and identity access management is another key thing. I think one of the key challenges also with customers is over-privileging system admins, because if they don't understand the full feature set of the control plane for each cloud provider, by the very nature of having too much scope, that's exactly the vector where threats and security hacks will come from. So overall, I think by having that understanding and patching, but not just patching the control plane itself, they have to link it through APIs, whatever means they have available, to make sure that all of the tools that are adhering to control plane access are also secure from end to end.
Next up, we've got limited visibility, often termed shadow IT for those that might know it better that way, but it's often related to when customers move to cloud, they lose visibility of things like their architecture, operational components, but how do we try and help customers to mitigate that?
So I think the very first thing customers need to do is create a shadow IT policy. That's to protect the employees from bringing devices into the cloud environment and also locking down the cloud access itself. Very often customers could quarantine any spurious devices that employees would actually bring in as well. And I think the discipline of having very clear training for staff and employees about the importance of not bringing shadow IT into the cloud arena is going to be critical. Cloud access, so CASB, is another way of masking access for IT shadow devices so that they can't get into the device. So in finality, it's clear that customers must look at an end-to-end process to make sure that shadow IT doesn't infiltrate their cloud services and access.
So the fourth risk is the shared responsibility model. Now, while all of the vendors offer some form of secure platform, it's also really important that customers adhere to this shared responsibility model. How do we help customers to understand what they're responsible for and what the vendor's responsible for?
I think the clarity of taking the centralization ownership of data, if they think about their prized possession that's at the center of everything that's mostly a threat, if they think about how do they protect that, and ultimately with the hyperscalers, the data is still the organization, the company's or the customer's responsibility. So I think by taking that and understanding exactly what the race is, so the responsibility, accountability, informed and consulted, just take it as that model, understanding exactly how your data is secure and not accepting the default security settings either. Most of the time that has to be an agreement between the way that you want to set your applications and data up and the way the hyperscalers deliver that as a standard. So it has to be understood by both the customer and the hyperscaler before you can believe that these data will ever be secure.
So lastly, the fifth risk is misconfiguration. So misconfigurations in clouds can lead to the likes of data breaches for customers. Very detrimental in the sense that if customers leave this open, it can then make them vulnerable to the likes of a hacking attack. How do we try and protect customers from things like that happening?
So I think understanding each hyperscaler's feature functionality of how to configure correctly is critical. The assumption that one is the same as the other is absolutely not the case. Making sure that you check your security configuration constantly or regularly, and also looking at the areas such as your Git repositories, which quite often have data that sits there and grows. And if you think about DevSecOps is a critical part, and that's because security has to be part of every setting, every configuration, and every access control. And again, that's also the same for the access keys within AWS. Quite often, the AWS keys open up the access to all of the AWS resources. So that's a target of attack that many of the threats and hackers will look for. So if you don't have the discipline and you don't have the understanding of the primary feature functionality to configure correctly in the first place, this will leave a hole in your security posture.
So to navigate these security challenges appropriately, customers are often encouraged to follow the likes of best practices. So that could include the likes of security assessments, understanding how best to control access or user access, adopting the likes of DevOps, and you've mentioned that in one of your statements before, DevOps is so important to support on that security, but also governance controls.
Absolutely agree. So the best posture for security is having full visibility end to end, understanding the nuances in the feature functionality, making sure you understand where the Git repository and the data resides, on not over-privileging access to admin users where actually those feature functionalities become an actual threat themselves. So in conclusion, it's important that customers understand the threat vectors that are coming up as opposed to the threat vectors they're dealing with, and look at the likes of data loss and ransomware with a certain amount of rigor to make sure that they're prepared and they're using best practice all the way.
Thanks for that, Gary. That was really, really insightful. So in conclusion, while the cloud brings incredible benefits, we have to be mindful of the security risks, and taking proactive measures in terms of mitigating them is essential. If you're ready to embrace the cloud and the benefits that it can bring, our team at Softcat is ready to have those conversations with you and support those efforts.